this week's Torah portion. And this week's Torah portion, it starts off, in the last week's Torah portion, we didn't have time to get to it, but Avram was the first Jew. He, towards the end, he is circumcised. And this was a very big deal because he was 99 years old when he was circumcised. And that is, not the same as getting a circumcision when you're 8 years old and, you can't talk and you can't say anything, you don't know. Which I just saw recently, this beautiful post where, because of what's going on in Israel, there was a man in California and he said that he wanted to have a bris in order, like that was his way of showing he's committed and helping the people over there. He had a bunch of different illnesses, or there were a lot of things that he couldn't do. And he said that was something that he could do. And, of course, having it at whatever age he was, 50 years old, is very different than having it. So Abraham had a bris and he was circumcised. And it says that on the third day, like after having a surgery, on the third day, it was that's like the hardest day. That's when a person doesn't feel well, it's the worst time. So he was there, and Hashem, in his kindness, because Abraham, his favorite thing to do was have guests and feed them. He was very wealthy, and he would feed them a lot of delicious foods. And he would also tell them about Hashem, his new discovery. As we said, Avram is the first Jew, and he discovered Hashem, and that was his mission in life, that he should tell other people. It says, like, if you have something that and other people could be living with this light, then the idea is you want to share it and you want to give it to them. So Avraham discovers Hashem. A lot of stories that we, kind of skipped out before, but he has a lot of tests. He has a lot that he's being tested for. His father, Terach, was a tremendous idol worshiper, and he wanted him to serve idols. And Avram is like, no, that's not the truth. And there's a famous story that one time his father asked him to watch over his store because he was going away, and it was all idols. And Avram's like, this is false, this is wrong, and I'm not standing for this. So he destroyed all the idols, but he left one because he knew his father would come back and be upset. So he left one idol, and in this idol he was holding an axe. He put like an axe in the big idol, in the biggest idol that he didn't smash. And his father came back and said, what happened? Why did you smash all the idols? And he said, me? And me smashed the idols? What are you talking about? And his father said, what do you mean? He said, look, the axe is in the big idol's hands. Why aren't you saying he smashed? And his father, Terach, said, what do you mean? The idol doesn't know how to smash? He can't do that. And he said, so then, Father, why are you serving him if he has no power and he can't do anything? So this was his mission in life too. And of course, his father was very upset. And he said, you need to be burned. And he took him to the king. The king put him in the furnace to be burned. I guess he came to ask the king, like, what should we do if my son, who's an idol worshiper, who's not listening? Look what he did. Smashed all the idols. And he said, we're going to have to burn him. We're going to have to put him in the furnace. And they put Avram in the furnace, but Hashem made a big, big miracle. And he came out alive. And he miraculously came out of the furnace alive. And then his brother, Haran, I said to him, and what do you think? Because I wanted to make it, really, what are you going to do? And he said, well, if Avram came out alive, hey, let me join him. So he said, yeah, I'll go in I'm not serving idols. They're hoping he would say, of course, I believe in idols. He goes, no, if Abraham came out alive, I'm going to also go in. And so that's what he did. Hi, Susan. Welcome. I can't see your face.
I have to, I know, I have to fix my,
okay, no worries. We're so happy you joined.
thank you. Well, because of Naomi, thank you.
So what happened? So his brother Haran, like the smart aleck, okay, Abraham came out alive. Hey, I'm going to do that. And I'll also be able to have this big miracle happen to me. But that's not the way it works. It does not go that way. Hashem made a miracle for Avram because he believed. And that belief, like we spoke about a different class, when you believe, you hold on and you connect to Hashem in such a strong way, and your belief is that strong, you get these unlimited powers of Hashem. But if you don't believe and you're not really connected to Hashem, then you're not supernatural. So Abraham was saved, and Haran, his brother, was not. And then Abraham came to take care of his son, his nephew, Haran's son, and he would take care of him. And so how this all connects to what we're saying is we see how committed Abraham was to spreading the name of Hashem, to teaching the world that there is a God in this world. And so what happened is he had a tent, and the tent, because that's what they lived in those days, and the tent had 4 doors, and all 4 doors were open, meaning his home was so open that if you're coming from the north, the south, the east, or the west, you could come inside to his house. It was open door policy. Everybody come in. And a lot of people would be passing, and he would, here you could wash your feet, and you could wash your hands, and come, he'd give them a gourmet meal. And then at the end, they would say, do we need to pay? And he says, no. He would ask them, he would say, could you please now thank Hashem? Thank God. Because it would teach them about God. Now, thank God. Grace, praise that Hashem, he gave you this food. So, sorry, I'm just letting a few more people in. Just give me a second. Okay. So that's what happened. He had this very, very open home, and he invited all these guests. Hi, Sarita, welcome. Thank you for joining. And he just, that was his life. So they would come in and give them the food, and then he would say, now you need to thank Hashem. You need to thank Hashem for giving you this food. Here we go, let's thank. And a lot of them would say, thank Hashem. Who's Hashem? I don't want to. I don't believe in God. And he would say, okay, if Hashem did give you this food and you don't want to thank him, then guess what? You got to pay. You got to pay me. Because if you don't believe that Hashem gave you the food, then I gave you the food. And then you need to pay for it. So they would say, all right, I guess Hashem really gave the food. Welcome, Andrea. And, and then so this is how he would slowly, every day teach a few more people about the existence of Hashem. And this was his favorite mitzvah. Avraham is the attribute of chesed, of kindness, of giving. And that's what he would do. He would just, every day, this was his mission. He would invite people walking down the street, come in on the street, it was the desert, walking along, and invite them and give them, food. So, as I said at the beginning of the class, for those who just joined, Avram had a bris at 99 years old because Hashem only commanded him later. He was the first Jew. His son Yishmael was 13 years old, And his son Yitzchok, Isaac, was born later and had his bris at 8 days old. So Yitzchok is the first Jew to have his bris 8 days, as the custom is nowadays. I mean, as it says in the Torah. So why did Abram have to be commanded? Because you can't harm yourself without a command from God. You can't cut. We're not allowed to make cuts on ourselves. So anyway, so he has this bris. So now, on the third day, you don't feel well. That's when you're most sick. So it comes the third day, and he doesn't feel well, and he's sick. And Hashem does a mitzvah that we have in the Torah, which is called Bikur Chaylim, visiting the sick. And what does he do? He appears to Abraham. Wouldn't that be nice if I wasn't feeling one day, Hashem would just come and visit me? But anyways, that's what happened. He had a very special relationship with Hashem. It was very holy. And Hashem came and he appeared to him. And interestingly enough, in the midst of this conversation, so Hashem did a very big kindness. He said, Abraham, if there's a guest, he can't resist. He is so chesed, he is so full of kindness that he cannot resist seeing people. I mean, he's not feeling well, he's sick. So Hashem made it very, very, very hot day, extremely hot, that nobody was outside and nobody was passing by. So guess what? Nobody came. And Avram is sitting there and he's really like, it's very hard for him. He cannot do what he loves to do best. But Hashem said it's going to be too much for him, so this is what he did. So when he's sitting there and he's bored and he can't be doing what he loves to do, inviting guests and teaching guests about Hashem and giving them food, it's called Haknasas Orchem, which is entering guests into your home. And he cannot do this. And so Hashem comes and he visits him. He comes to see how he's doing, to give him a visit. And what happens? He's in the middle of, talking to Hashem, conversing with Hashem. And then Hashem sent 3 angels who look like people. And Avram sees them walking by. And he says, excuse me, Hashem. Please, I hope you don't mind if I'm going to excuse myself here. I'm going to pass and I'm going to go talk to these guests. And that's very interesting because Avram is in the middle of a conversation with God, which we call Kabbalah's Pnei Shechina. He was receiving the face of God's presence. He's in the middle of a conversation. Imagine like someone's in the middle of a conversation with the king. And he sees a few average, regular people, strangers on the street. He says, excuse me, we're going to have to interrupt our conversation because I have to go and greet those people. So we learn from here how tremendous is the mitzvah of Hachnasas Orchim, of inviting guests, that it's even greater than talking to Hashem, than receiving the Shekhinah. And so that is a very important lesson to us. Sometimes people get very caught up in their own self-growth, in their own, I need to pray, I need to learn, I need to focus on myself, physically, spiritually, whatever it may be. But even here, talking to Hashem directly, which is very important, obviously, to work on our relationship with Hashem and to make it a part of our lives in a real way. But what do we learn from here? What takes precedence? Inviting guests, which is a part of a bigger mitzvah called V'ahavta l'reacha kamaycha. You should love another Jew like yourself. So this takes precedence over speaking to Hashem, over spending time with Hashem, you should go and worry about helping another Jew. And we know that is, like we say now with everything going on in Israel, I think the most popular song right now is Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish people are alive. And it's this idea of unity, everybody coming together and loving each other, regardless of who you are, what you are, what type of person. So we see how tremendous it is to go and help another person, even more than speaking with Hashem. So of course we want to do both. There's a time and place for both, where you're in a situation where you could just work on yourself and refine yourself, or you could help somebody else. We see that helping someone else and inviting a guest takes precedence. Now, there was once a young boy who was 4 or 5 years old. His name was Reb Shalom Doivber. He was one of the Lubavitcher Rebbes. He was the father-in-law of a previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was the grandfather of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's wife. And they used to call him, his name was Reb Shalom Doivber. They used to call him the Rashab. And he was about 4 or 5 years old. He was learning in school. And he learned this Torah portion. And he learned that Hashem appeared to Avraham. And it was his birthday that week, because his birthday is the 20th of Marcheshvan, which falls out in this parsha of Parshas Vayera, which Vayera means, and he appeared. It's when Hashem appeared to Avraham. And he's learning this Torah portion. And the Torah portion says that Hashem appeared to Avraham. And it's his birthday. And on his birthday, he had a custom that he would go to his grandfather, who was the Rebbe, the rabbi of the community at that time. And on the birthday, the grandchildren would get to come in and have a private audience with their grandfather. And so it was his turn to come with his grandfather. It wasn't only his grandfather, but he was the leader of the whole community. And he came in for this private audience to get a blessing on his birthday. And he comes in and he bursts out crying. And his grandfather's like, "Why are you crying? What happened?" And he said, "I learned in this week's Torah portion, the Parshas Vayera, that it says that Hashem appeared to Avraham. And I'm very upset, because why doesn't Hashem appear to me?" And so he was upset about that. And then his grandfather answered him, and he said, when a Jew, a righteous Jew, when he has a circumcision, a bris, at 99 years old, he deserves that God appears to him. And this little boy who was 4 or 5 years old, who later grew up to be a tremendous, tremendous rabbi, he stopped crying. He was satisfied with the answer. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe told over the story. And he said that at first glance, you would think that we don't need to really take a lesson from the story, because he was 4 or 5 years old. He was a little kid. It's not an important story. He wasn't even like at the age of real education. He was just, it wasn't even like first grade, 6 years old, when you really start primary school and you start to get educated. He said, but he told it over to his son, who told it over to his son, and they publicized the story. So obviously there's a lot we can learn from the story. And he said, what can we learn from the story? He said, we can learn 2 things. We can learn one from the question and one from the answer. What do we learn from the question? It says the fact that the Rashab, this young boy, was only 4 or 5 years old, he was a little kid, and he asked that, why didn't Hashem appear to me? Says that's what all of us can learn. That we should all be asking Hashem, why isn't Hashem appearing to me? Why isn't God appearing to me? And he says, even if you're 4 or 5 years old, you could ask that Hashem appear to you. And he said, what is 4 or 5 years old? It doesn't only mean physically, it can mean spiritually. In other words, on your passport, meaning in physical years, a person could be 4 or 5 years old, and spiritually he could be on a very high level, or the opposite. A person could be 90 years old, 75 years old on his passport, and in spiritual years, he could be only 5 years old. He doesn't have to be. So he says, even if a person is young, whether it's physically or whether it's spiritually, because you would think if spiritually I'm on such a low level and I don't really know much about the Torah and I don't really know much about the mitzvahs and I don't practice that much and I don't do that much. So then why? What right do I have to go and ask that Hashem appear to me? Doesn't seem to make sense. Why should I sort of have that privilege? What are that right? Like maybe, as we call it, a chutzpah. Maybe it's like you have the audacity. Like, you're going to ask God to appear to you? Who are you? We learn from this that no, even if you're like a little 4-year-old, spiritually, and you don't know much Torah, and you don't necessarily practice too much, and you're not so connected, still, you can, and not you can, but you should demand. Not just ask, but demand. Like he was crying. What does crying show us? When a person cries, it's an overflow of the brain. It's basically when your intellect cannot grasp something, tears come. Like when something doesn't make sense to you, could just be you're too tired or your brain can't work properly, and then you cry more. But when something like, let's say, for example, someone is in pain, it's like their brain can't grasp it, and that pain just causes tears. Or someone heard bad news, their brain cannot comprehend and grasp and put that pain of the tragedy into their brain. It's too much. So that's where tears come. So when he was crying, it was so deep. It's like when you have such a deep emotion and you can't just put it into the compartments of your brain. It's above that. So it was so deep that he started to cry. So we learn not only should you demand that Hashem appear to you, but you should demand that Hashem appear to you on the level that he appeared to. You should demand. How should you demand? You should demand with a strength, like he was crying. He wasn't just asking like casually. He really, really wanted it in such a very strong way. So he says, when you ask for Hashem appear to you, don't just ask like, oh yeah, Hashem, that would be nice. You really should, it should come from the depths, from a deep place. That's not like it would make sense for me to see God, but from a deeper place that's above intellect, of a real want and a real connection, a real strength. I want to see Hashem. And that's what each of us know. What does this mean? That we should ask that Hashem appear to us. If anyone would like to unmute themselves and share, what do you think that means for me and you today, sitting here many years after Abraham had this gift that Hashem appeared to him and say, well, we want to have the same thing. We're children of Abraham. We're also Jews. And Hashem, we want you to appear to me. Just like you appeared to Abraham, hey, appear to me. I mean, does that mean I think I'm going to have a dream and see God? What do you think that would mean in my life and in your life today? Would anyone like to unmute themselves and share their thoughts on this? Susan, what do you think?
I think that demand is a very not the way that I wouldn't use demand in that English word. I would use more request. That if I needed a close personal answer from God, then I would request. I request. I don't demand. Maybe that's because I'm from a different upbringing, different.
Right. No, generally we don't use that word, and I'm not making up the word. In other words, that's the way it was quoted, where I learned this piece. And the reason why I'm using the word demand, I'm so happy you brought that up, is because it's like with the strength. It's like when you want something so badly, you don't just say like, "Did I get it?" And if you say no, okay. It's showing the idea of I really want this, and I'm going to make sure it happens.
Right.
It's
I
like that
understand.
investment and that strengthening. But what do you think that means? Like, what do we
Well,
want
you
to happen?
clarified it. Now it makes sense. The thing is, I when I need answers, when I need really hard answers, I always I just pray and ask for the answers, and they come to me. I can't even explain how it happens. And it's not praying in an official way or using official words or using Hebrew or anything like that. It's coming from my heart. I need answers. This year has been a very difficult year because there have been a lot of deaths among the people that I associate with. A lot of deaths that were a shock. Someone 47 years old dropped dead at work. My brother died, 67 years old. My friend's parents passed away within 2 weeks of each other. The father first, and then the mother, 2 weeks to the day. All of these deaths, I never went through anything like this ever. And I know there's a reason, a very deep reason. God's trying to get my attention, for sure.
Right. So I think, if I'm understanding correctly, what Susan is bringing out is that you feel that connection to God. So in other words, when you speak and say, "God, I want to see you," it's not that you physically see Hashem and you have an image. Okay, now Hashem looks like this, but you feel his presence. You feel like a spiritual hug, if you want to say. You
exactly.
Feel like Hashem heard you.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. That's beautiful. Does anyone else want to share what they think? Welcome, Melissa. Does anyone else want to share what they think that would mean, that you want Hashem to appear to you in your life? Like, what could that possibly mean? Sarita or Andrea, Nomi, Alyssa, if anyone would like to share.
Well, this is Sarita. I am
Hi, Sarita.
very confused because when I was 5 years old, we left in 1933, Poland, and everybody was killed. My grandparents, everybody, just my mother and father that were 30 years old. Now, at the end of my life, we have all this happening in Israel. So it's very difficult for me to believe. Very, very difficult.
So in other words, you feel like it's difficult to feel Hashem's presence now and to see Hashem.
Exactly.
Right.
Because you see the news and they're horrible.
Terrible. Absolutely horrible. So what I would like to see, right, we don't have answers and we can't understand, why Hashem does certain things, but we do know that
I don't think Hashem can do that. So I wonder if there is a Hashem. I'm sorry. I really wonder.
Right.
Because if there would be somebody up there, they wouldn't allow. I was raised with no love of family. And my parents were very strict with me. I realize now, at my old age, that they they only had me until my brother came almost 9 years later. So I wasn't allowed to do anything. I wasn't allowed to go out. I wasn't allowed to have friends.
Right.
And
Wow.
they killed my father's parents and brothers and everybody.
Right. They instilled such a, so even through hard times, which we're definitely living right now in very hard times, there's seeing the hand of God or not seeing the hand of God. So there's lots of miracles that, are happening every day. I personally don't look at the news. I don't need to see them torturing Jewish people. I think it's, I almost feel like
I
it's
think you should see
disrespectful
the
for me.
news. You should see the news so you can feel it in your heart.
No,
I mean,
of
you
course,
cannot
we feel and
avoid.
we're aware, but I don't want to see the
happening.
graphic pictures of it just to give them that pleasure of us, seeing that and demoralizing my,
Kind
Jewish
of
brothers and
pleasure.
sisters.
Does it,
But
I mean, our Jews are being killed. And do you think that they want us to ignore that? To
no,
avoid
God
looking at
forbid,
that?
God forbid. No, that's not what I mean to say.
Yeah.
We're not in denial. We're not ignoring. 100% we need to do. But if you ask to see Hashem in your life and you choose to look for miracles, or if you choose to look for a more godly perspective, then you could see that. So Hashem is not
Well, let me tell
appearing to
you.
most of us in a
Let me tell
dream.
you. My high age, and I'm 100% healthy. All the numbers when I go to the doctor are perfect. I'm going to be
Kenai Nahara.
in 5 years. I'm going to be 100. I
Kenai
still cook and go out and do everything I did
Yes,
before.
Sarita's a real inspiration to everybody. You should put on your camera so everyone can see how good you look.
No, it's
So
okay.
we definitely don't understand the ways of Hashem, but if we want to see Hashem, there are miracles happening every minute where rockets are not being
Well, it could happen that the rockets should not be sent.
right.
What are we?
But Hashem, but if miracles don't happen, then you don't know to appreciate it. In other words, you only realize.
I would appreciate if there was a peace in the world. I really
Of
would.
course, but human nature is,
And
if
look what they're
someone
doing
gets
now.
sick and then
I
they
can
get
leave-
healed,
Look,
then
somebody sent something to me. Did you
they said
see?
you are so modest and you are a miracle. Yes, Sarita is a real
I am
blessing, a
modest.
real miracle.
I'm not modest. I think that my health is because I take care. I do the
Right.
bicycle at home twice a day, 30 minutes each.
Yes,
I try to think only very good thoughts. But
so that's exactly the point. Sarita, I wanna go on that point. When
okay.
you think good thoughts and you think in the way that Hashem does, you see it through Hashem's perspective, then you feel Hashem. These other people, they want to bring more darkness. The way that we dispel darkness is more light. We try to think and do in the way of Hashem, which is thinking, like you said, in a more positive way, which is noticing the miracles, which is adding more light. Whether it's lighting the Shabbos candles, whether it's calling a friend who I know is lonely and I want to, help her
And then
out.
another thing, I lost my daughter.
Sorry.
What did that do to Hashem? Made him happy? Why should I lose my daughter? She was my best friend. I have accepted it. I live my life the best I can. I take care of my health, so nobody has to come and do for me. On Sundays, my son comes and I make lunch for him, and I go out with him.
Right.
So
I you're choosing, despite the pain and suffering that is going on for you personally and around you, you are choosing to see Hashem and live a life and continue on and see miracles. For example, there was when this whole thing broke out, the whole war in Israel, there was a man, and they had to run and take their guns. They couldn't even practice if the guns worked. Usually you have to practice and make sure they work and fine tune them. They're rusty. And he just ran. And he was fighting for like 3 days and shooting, and he saved a lot of the hostages, and he was doing a lot. And afterwards, when he finally had respite after 3 days, for a few minutes, he went to go and check out his gun and see, and he saw it completely didn't work. It was complete malfunction. God made a miracle that it worked. And you could read every day so many stories, and you could choose to see and feel everything that Hashem does, that Hashem is taking care of. That thank you, Hashem, today that I woke up today, that I could see, that I could hear, and you could,
Yes,
feel
but
Hashem
that is
in your
me.
life.
But like I have a friend, she's from South America. She settled in Israel. She's in Jerusalem, and they're scared. They are so scared.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
What we realize after all of
Okay.
this, yeah. So no, everybody is scared, and we have to turn to
if
Hashem
God
throughout
is
Jewish
the
history.
Jews,
When
if the
Jews
Jews,
had
if the
throughout Jewish
Jews
history,
are the
when Jews,
favorite people, why doesn't he just go against the Arabs, the bad ones, the Hamas, and the others,
he will. It's coming
instead
soon.
of
Don't
to
worry.
us?
So
Instead of us?
basically, Hashem is.
Wow.
We're all connecting more to Hashem, and through us connecting more to Hashem, then we are able to bring about more revelation of Hashem. And when we bring out more and more revelation, we lead to the time of Mashiach. It says right before Mashiach comes, it's going to be very, very dark, just like it's very dark before dawn. And the way that when we
It
keep
can't
on,
be any more
sometimes
darker.
it can't get more dark. So that's how we know Mashiach's coming very soon. And this brings out our connection to Hashem. Mashiach is going to be when Hashem is fully revealed, and there's going to be no bad and no death in this world. And every time we connect to Hashem and we see Hashem and we recognize Hashem and we feel Hashem and we do a mitzvah and we learn Torah, we connect to Hashem, we bring more light in the world, we dispel that darkness, and we bring the era of Mashiach, which this is all the last pains right before the last darkness, right before Mashiach comes. And I just want to end off that I said we could learn something from the question. We could also learn something from the answer. So the answer was that when God was 99, he had a circumcision. Now, what is a circumcision? A circumcision is when a man cuts off and takes a piece of his body that he could use for pleasure, and he dedicates and he gives it to God. It's all about using our material body and our material things to serve Hashem. It's about nullifying
that pleasure still stays, and that's a little piece that is completely unnecessary.
That's true, but it's symbolic.
It doesn't change the physical feelings.
Right, but it's symbolic of the fact. It's not saying that's lessening. It's symbolic of the fact that a piece of our material body we are giving to God to show that we want to give our physical to God. So we're nullifying what we could just focus on physicality. Instead, we're choosing to focus on spirituality. We call this nullification or humility. Humility it's not about what I want. I focus, what does Hashem want? And he says that is the prerequisite. If you want Hashem to appear to you, which we basically explain means feeling Hashem's presence in your life, then what do? You nullify your wants and your materialistic way of life, and you dedicate to Hashem. And when you tune in to Hashem by making your physicality a little quieter, and you focus on more spirituality, which would be Torah or doing a mitzvah, helping another, then you merit to feel Hashem more in your life. So
Well, at this
end
point,
off
all
with
we
a
have to do,
blessing.
what we have to do now is send money to Israel, to Amit, and to all the other places that they're collecting. That is one way of
Absolutely.
helping.
Yes, for
Otherwise,
sure.
we don't feel in peace.
Yeah. No, we always throughout Jewish history,
Federation.
there were the people, there, everyone was in a different division. Some people were on the battlefield, and those people need to be there. We thank them from the bottom of our hearts, and they're doing their job. Like you said, from America, we could send money, and we definitely should. And we could also, we believe that everything we do, every mitzvah we do, has an effect. And in the times of Mordechai and the story of Purim, in the times of Moses, there were always the people who prayed. Every prayer you say makes a difference. And so what we're going to do is we're going to end off with a prayer. And I give everyone a blessing that we should be able to nullify and not make so big in our life the idea of our physicality, but we should be able to see the spirituality, be able to connect to Hashem and do the mitzvahs and pray and bring safety to the Jews all over and to the entire world. So we're going to say now a little
Thank you for
Tehillim.
your speech.
Wants to join. We're going to end off with a chapter of Tehillim, which is going to be chapter 121, that a lot of people say for safety and security in Israel. And whoever wants can repeat after me. This is basically saying that I lift my eyes and I ask, where does help come from? And it says, help comes from God who made the heavens and the earth, and he never slumbers, and he protects us from everything we do. So now I'll say it in Hebrew. Shir, everyone feel free to repeat after me. Shir la malais esa enai ela harim me'ayin yavai Ezri im Adonai oisei shamayim va'aretz al yitain lamait raglecha al yanum shamrecha hine lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael Adonai shamrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha yaimam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach balayla Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra yishmar es nafshecha Adonai yishmar tzeitzcha v'voecha me'ata v'ad olam. May Hashem protect all of us, and may we see the ultimate revelation of Hashem with all our enemies destroyed and all of us living at peace with Mashiach now. Thank you all for joining, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Laura. Thank you
Good to
so
see
much.
you all. Yes.
Thank you,
all the
Devorah,
best.
Leah.
Stay
Thank
well.
you. Thank you. You too. Everyone
Oh.
stay well.